Hello there, this is Oscar Mikey and welcome to this Europa Universalis 4 guide to winning the 100 Years' War and War of the Roses in Ironman difficulty. This is taking place in the latest version of the game with all DLC included. I'm Oscar Mike and as always, thanks for watching. So let's begin, shall we? First thing we're going to do is manage our states interaction. You don't have to do this in the way I do it, but for the most part I just give a Burgess estate to Bordeaux and recruit the Tier 3 minister, demand administrative and diplomatic support from both the respective estates. Next up, we're going to select a debate to push through in Parliament. I generally prefer a military-centric one. In fact, I think consider that a must for this guide. Expand the army will do, although granted there are much better ones. And we're going to complete that prior to actually assigning a seat to a specific region. We're going to convert our faction leader into a general. Military focus, of course. Now, advisors should be user preference, but for the most part, I definitely recommend getting either a discipline advisor or a morale advisor. I think you need either one or the other, discipline being preferable. Essex is my chosen location for a parliamentary seat. And I'm going to recruit 6 chevauchés and 5 Latin medieval infantry. Now that's very important, okay, because you need, in order for this guide to work, you need the amount of infantry and cavalry you have to exceed that that France currently has. That'll give you the mission, force, personal union, and France. And then we're going to delete all our unnecessary fortifications. Now, alternatively, you can do this the second-day way, which is wait for the mission that requires you or requests that you cede Maine to France as part of the Treaty of Tours. I believe that's the event, but I don't like doing it that way because you're not in control. This way, where you procure the mission and then attack France preemptively, you're in control. And if you do get that event, all you have to do is wait, ignore the event, just don't select an option, bide your time, and then execute the attack as is posited in this guide. So very, very important if you want to procure that mission. Don't select rivals yet, because if you do, you're not going to get the mission. You have to wait until you have more infantry and cavalry than France, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're just biding our time here. So I keep my diplomats in reserve for the time being. No point using them. Nothing really much to do with them. Lull heresy, let them be. I will just marshal up our forces in Kent and start ferrying them over into Caux as soon as we can. All the while checking to see if we've got the mission option yet. Now this is of course a guide to winning the 100 Years' War and War of the Roses at the same time simultaneously. So there we go, we've got the mission. Once we've got the mission, force personal union in France, that gives us the necessary casus belli. We're going to fill out our rival slots. Provence is a must, as is France obviously. And then it's a toss up between Aragon and Burgundy. Again, user preference. Embargo all 3 of them, that'll boost your power projection a little bit. Sorry if I'm running through this at lightning speed, but I generally like to keep my guides down below the 35-minute mark. So if you're having difficulty following the pace, it does slow it down a bit in a few minutes. And alternatively, you can just watch a video again or pause as is necessary. Again, this is a set-piece strategy in terms of opening, so my advice would be to follow the steps perfectly, or if you've got a superior strategy, employ that as well. But this is a pretty user-friendly strategy in winning the 100 Years' War. So we're just marshalling up our forces in Kent, as I said, and preparing. We now have the casus belli, so we can attack France as soon as we want. I'm insulting Burgundy just because that boosts our power projection up just a little more, and that's good for army morale. That coupled with our discipline advisor is going to give our army some high quality, and we're going to need it because we're going to be fighting many battles ahead. So obviously you declare war at the start of the month. That way you take advantage of the fact that France's army maintenance is a little lower than yours. That's going to allow us to stack wipe this first army. So here we go, declare war, start of the month. Move in immediately with all our troops, concentrate all our forces, aim to attack their weaker stacks. So this is about 50% of the French army located in Paris, and that's the stack wipe. Alright, so after a racing start, though, as is the case of fighting Francis early in the game, there'll be many, many more battles afield, so this will be the first of many battles, and we're going to have to win basically all of them. You can afford to maybe lose a battle or two, but that's about it. Also, while I remember, keep an eye on the English channel, because I see we're at war with Venice as well. Venice likes to launch naval invasions in the south coast of England, so we're going to need our ships on guard duty to that end. So for most part for our strategy, we're just slowly sieging down Paris, defending the siege, occupying provinces wherever necessary, and basically baiting the French into attacking us in the north of France. We only aim to besiege down one fortification, and that's in Paris itself, and lucky for us, we just got a breach of their fortifications. Aside from that, we're just holding the north, sieging down Paris, and trying to eliminate any French armies that dare to venture north, and they'll oftentimes be drawn to Paris and Angers, and you can see here, Provence, and I just raised war taxes there, probably very important. If you're some sort of fiscal conservative, I advise turning off this video now because we will be taking an inordinate amount of loans in order to execute this strategy, as is commonplace with my guides. If you're not taking out 5 or 6 loans, you're not doing it right as far as I'm concerned. So hopefully we should be able to stack wipe this army easily. We have to do it before the French reinforce because they still got 17,000 troops, and there we go. Alright, and now because France is taking the bait, they will head straight for Paris, as you can see. They like to do this. So you've simply got to wait for them to attack into Paris, and then you move to reinforce. Aragon gave us a gift, that's nice. So here they come. We consolidate our regiments, and then we move forward. Now I was waiting to see whether or not I should wait for them to become movement locked, but then I remembered the French will attack into Paris regardless of you reinforcing, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. And we're getting some slightly okay rolls. I mean, they have so few cavalry that it doesn't really matter if we're getting crappy rolls, so... Yeah, so we don't stack wipe them here, so... and we get infantry combat ability for a general. That's quite a nice one to get. Obviously the best is cavalry combat ability, but I'll take it. So the key to stack wiping is, of course, you want the enemy army morale to deplete before the end of the second shock phase. So in a typical combat, you'll have one fire phase, one shock, then a second fire phase and a second shock. If you can deplete enemy army morale during or prior to the second shock phase, usually you'll get the stack wipe, and that's what this guide's all about. And in order to do that, best way to do that is obviously have high morale yourself, high discipline, and a high shock value army, which entails lots and lots of cavalry. Now, if you remember at the start of this guide, most of my troops I recruited were actually chevauchés. The reason why you want to waste manpower on chevauchés is they take much less casualties in combat, and I want to try and take out that French fleet there in Dodger Bank. So if you have a high proportion of manpower invested cavalry, then that leaves your infantry, which you'll supplement with mercenaries, taking the brunt of your casualties, which is less taxing on your overall manpower, which is what this guide's all about. So again, sticking true to our theme, we're basically just trying to hold down the north. Yeah, Siege of Paris complete. Now that's really, really nice. That was very quick, much quicker than I'm used to. I'll also point out at this stage that if you find yourself in a similar situation to me where you're fighting France, and they'll always have a bunch of allies, but sometimes they have Aragon as an ally. If that's the case and Aragon isn't currently engaged in another war whilst fighting you, my recommendation is just restart. I've tried several times to beat France and Aragon at the same time. I just can't do it. I can't come close. They just got too many damn troops, and it's too much to deal with. So if you find yourself at war with France and Aragon during this guide, just restart, try again. It's as simple as that. You won't get this in your first try. I've completed it this way 3 times now, and this was the best video I could put together because I thought that it was one where things didn't necessarily go my way, so it was a little more difficult. So again, we're holding the north of France. France is going to keep building up armies and throwing them into us. Don't underestimate France's ability to field absolutely atrocious amounts of troops. They have seemingly indispensable manpower and, disposable manpower, and that makes things very difficult for us. So I'm going to attack into Orléans, even though I'm going to take a negative combat modifier due to forests. Our general has higher maneuver than the French general, which is important because that will have the effect of negating the river crossing. So that's a very good stack wipe for us. That's great news. And you'd be thinking by now, watching this video, the French must be basically routed by now. I mean, we've just destroyed countless of their armies and stacked right many of them, but nope. True to form, here comes another French doom stack attacking into Maine. This is exactly why you don't want to disperse your forces for the purpose of this guide. That France's ability to raise new armies and throw them at you profligately is unmatched, and if you start trying to do fancy stuff like splitting up your armies, the French will exploit that and you'll be in a lot of trouble. You can't afford to lose battles as part of this guide. So they're going to attack into Alençon. They are going to actually reach Alençon before I can move into Maine, so I am going to cancel that movement and reinforce, and that forces them to cancel their movement, and then we attack into Maine. Maine is grassy plains, and although there is a river crossing with our general superior maneuver, we will negate that. And again, keep an eye in the English Channel. The Venetians love those naval invasions in the south of England, and if they do successfully land troops in the south of England, you're screwed. Okay, so you see what I'm talking about there. We've so badly mauled their original starting armies that they're relying almost exclusively on infantry now. And that makes it very easy to get the stack wipes. You just want 2-to-1 numerical superiority, and that's a guaranteed stack wipe, provided you don't get atrocious rolls, but you'll win regardless. The French can't win battles if they're fielding pure infantry armies. It's just impossible. Their only hope is to wear you down. Warriors do not read books. Take -1 stability. Well, that sucks. That's going to hurt us when it comes to completing the War of the Roses, but it's fine. We'll deal with it when it comes to that. Alright, so some French reinforcing troops. They'll keep doing this. They'll keep attacking piecemeal. And that's why we don't hit. True to form, sure as rain. Here come the Venetians. I did warn you, they love to do this, so they're trying to launch 10,000 troops across the English Channel. If they do successfully disembark those troops, you're completely screwed. So keep an eye in the English Channel. Many a guide has been squandered by the cursed Venetians, so just keep an eye on that. It doesn't require too much attention, and you can obviously do this a lot slower than I am. I'm trying to rush through it, basically, for the sake of brevity. Alright, so we defeat their fleet, but unfortunately don't take out any of their ships, which means they'll be back. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, they will be back many a times. They've just got this obsession with the south of England. It's a heck of a round trip, but we'll be seeing them shortly. So we're completing these occupations, and again, we're not focused on sieging any additional fortifications. We just want to fight this attritional style of wiping out the French armies and accruing enough war scores so that we can force a personal union. Now this is bad. I'm going to have to reforce Nemours. I'm not going to be able to escape from Champagne and then move my army from Orléans through Paris to Nemours as well. And that we should be able to win this fairly comfortably, although we will probably take quite a bit of damage, probably more than is necessary. So this is a risk of dispersing your troops even a little bit. I generally avoid this unless it's occupying provinces in the safe areas. So here we go. Fighting Jean Buret. Famous French general known for his impressive artillery wagon, which was used to decisive effect historically over the English in the Battle of Castillon in 1453. And we win that battle rather nicely. So it may appear we're running out of things to do, but the reality is with Paris successfully sieged down, all we need to do is hold this northern enclave and we're basically done. Just have to accrue that war score from holding Paris, whilst ensuring that the France are unable to set up some crazy doom stack and retake the city, all the while keeping an eye on that critical English Channel. Yeah, so I recruited a mercenary in Namur to help me win that battle, but unfortunately it's movement locked because I recruited it next to the one of provinces. So that's the extent to which I can move that unit. Unfortunate, but I don't feel like disbanding it. So I'll just keep him there, scouting, essentially. Alright, and a lot of reason why I'm constantly rotating my army from Orléans back to Maine and Alençon is that will ensure that any army that's sieging down Le Bourd will be triggered to attack north, and that'll keep them from successfully sieging down Le Bourd. You can see that now, they're actually moving some troops up north, and that will keep resetting that siege and prevent them from sieging it down. If they do siege down that province, that's going to be bad news for us. It's going to really harm our war score and delay the war. And remember, we're on the clock, essentially. The War of the Roses is going to trigger. We want it to trigger. That's the whole point of this guide. Because I don't want to be stuck with a 0-0 faction leader. You can try to marry off, get a bunch of royal marriages to increase the likelihood of getting an heir. But I'd rather the War of the Roses fight. I think it sets you up a much stronger position in the late game. So this battle's going to be important. You can see how few cavalry the French are left with now. That's why we're inflicting such high casualty damage on them. And we get rather poor rolls, so that precludes us from getting the stack right, but we'll take it. And Orléans is moving up north as well, hoping to reinforce, but this is a guaranteed stack right. 5,000 infantry. Not a chance. So that should be another 5,000 troops demolished. Sure enough, there we go. So things are looking bright. You're probably tempted to think by now that we've got this almost won, but I keep warning you, the French have this unparalleled ability to field massive armies with huge reserves, and they can keep throwing them at us. And it's gonna push this guide right down to the wire. And we can't just defeat France, we have to defeat France while having enough manpower to ultimately win the War of the Roses. So again, that clock is ticking down. We're on a narrow time limit, and we're going to have to make the best of it. And I see, this is great. France, so long as you occupy the northern territories, France will keep doing this. They'll keep sending these piecemeal armies up north. And this army that we're attacking consists mostly of cavalry. Yeah, look at that, guys. 3,000 cavalry defeated. So that's the majority of France's cavalry wiped out in a single engagement. So that's taken out. If that army was able to regroup with their main stack, that would be a force to be reckoned with. As it was, they got the negative combat modifiers from having disproportionate numbers of cavalry, so we were able to easily dispatch that army. And that lone mercenary regiment, unfortunately, was taken out. So yeah, France will keep attacking this. They attack through Angers, and they try and retake Paris. Also important to note that if you do lose a battle prior to sieging down Paris and you retreat into Normandy or Caen, they can pursue you right into that province and eliminate your entire army. So very important for the purposes of this guide in the opening stage. Do not lose the initial battles under any circumstances. That's why it's important to have a non-commensurate amount of troops. You need total numerical superiority. If you don't... Oh god, here comes the Venetians. Alright, so we need to intercept that pronto. Don't want to have to deal with 10,000 Venetian troops marauding the south of England. It's a very, very unpleasant experience, I should say. Yeah, it's a very attritional style of fighting. We simply don't have the ability to fight these highly maneuverable styles because France has a bunch of fortifications in really good strategic locations. So the only way we can tack into south of France is basically through a naval invasion. So let's see how this battle goes. We get an appalling 8-2 shock roll. We win the fire roll slightly, and then another 6-2 shock roll. So if we had got good rolls there, if we had got average rolls and we had matched France's rolls, that would have been a guaranteed stack wipe. As it was, we suffered a ton of casualties. So our manpower, if you actually recall, at the very outset of this guide, we basically nuked our manpower to 0. And we nuked our manpower by recruiting a ton of cavalry, and that's the critical thing. You do not want to be in a situation where you're hiring mercenaries chevauchés. It's way too expensive. All your mercenaries should be infantry. All your manpower should be dedicated towards cavalry. And if France does this with their fleet and you can't catch them, just detach your fastest ships, which are trade ships, and try and pursue them in the North Sea. You'll usually be able to catch them. Again, insofar as it pertains to army movements, I'm not really I'm not really aspiring to do much here. We're accruing the war score from holding Paris. For the most part, I'm keeping my army in the north. Okay, War for Roses has fired. We obviously gonna 251 is an okay-ish faction leader. We're gonna lose manpower, not that that matters. We're gonna have to deal with 26 pretender regiments at some point in the future. That's gonna bite, but we will be able to accomplish it. Alright, here comes France again. They love attacking into Azure. Every time they do, we pursue them. We've so heavily damaged their cavalry that they really can't field very effective armies now. Barring atrocious rolling, we should be able to have these battles on lockdown. So we want to see if we can capture this army. Yeah, my previous playthrough to this, I paused the game, was able to beat France. We win a naval victory. Okay, that's fine, we'll just ignore that. I was able to beat the France. I paused the game, forced a personal union on France, and then picked the War for Roses, new faction leader, and the game was paused. So don't do that, because that will have the effect of, if you select the decision War for Roses, pick a particular faction leader, whilst the game is paused after having just forced a personal union on France, then the personal union will immediately break. So all your endeavours will be to naught, and you will be completely screwed. You will have essentially lost France, and you will be in a huge truce timer, so you won't be able to replicate it. So just be mindful of that. You want to pick your faction leader via War for Roses prior to beating up France in the war. All the more reason why I like the War for Roses firing is it guarantees security of France in a personal union. If you try some funny business with royal marriages, there's always the chance that you'll lose the personal union after the fact. So we're getting atrocious rolls here, true to form. We lost the first rolls quite decisively, so we actually lose that battle. Something very important: if you do lose a battle like that, for the love of God, make sure your transport ships are located in the Strait of Dover so you can retreat. You don't want to be retreating into Caen or Normandy, because if you don't have Paris in particular, they can pursue you into those provinces and usually wipe you out. So again, taking out more and more loans. Recruiting some additional mercenaries. House of Beaufort. New heir, excellent. And a new queen consort. Well, that means that provided we can win here, the war, the actual 100 Years' War, we're in a very strong position in the late game. Now, France is a far ways off suing for peace yet. So we're just going to have to bite the bullet, take out more and more loans, and see if we can bring this war to a conclusion. So I'm harrying Chevauché now. I have no choice. Need more cavalry. And we're getting a bunch of bad events. So we've had the Lollard Heresy. We've had a -1 stability hit. Now we get a bunch of quarantine events. Things aren't going great for us on the RNG side of things, the event focus side of things, but for the most part we're in a pretty good position. I'm just gonna, yeah, okay, we don't want to do that, so let's take those troops and scurry back across English Channel. So I'm gonna wait for my army's morale to recover, and then I'm gonna launch a counterattack. I'm not taking any risks here. I'm just taking out as many loans as I feel I need. Another couple defeats is all it would take for France to actually completely frustrate this guide. So we're erring on the side of caution, certainly. And here's a tip for you. If you're in a situation like this, you're 0 manpower, detach your manpower regiments, consolidate them, but don't consolidate your mercenary regiments. Keep them reinforcing. That'll save you a bit of money and, more importantly, time. So France is doing an interesting strategy here. They're splitting up their troops to occupy as many provinces as we can. Part of the reason they're doing this is because we demolished the fortification in Normandy, so we're actually taking advantage of that fact, and we're going to move our troops to see if we can stack wipe these enemy armies and continue reinforcing. Anytime France disperses their troops, as you see, it's just a given for us to mop up. So we want to take out as many of these small stacks as possible prior to dealing with the main threat. Right, moving into Normandy. This should be another guaranteed stack wipe. Yeah, another 2,000 infantry defeated. And so they've... Yeah, so 20,000 troops. Do you see what I mean? Think about how many armies we've crushed. And couple that with the fact that they've still got almost 23,000 troops sitting in Paris. That's actually more troops than I have in my entire army right now. So the only thing I can do to stave off complete disaster is taking out more loans and hiring as many mercenaries as possible. So we'll do that. And we'll see if we can eliminate this single army in Orléans. Now, there are a few tricks you can employ to try and break up them from these Doomstack type tactics, and one is roaming around the countryside trying to take out as many of their small stacks as possible. That'll usually force them to disperse. And you can also evacuate northern France. That'll split their army up, and they'll usually go on a sort of occupying streak, in which case you can simply chip away at their small stacks. It's all about abusing the AI's deficiencies. God forbid if you were trying this against a human player, I don't think it would be remotely possible. So we need superior number of forces. You can see they only have 4 cavalry units, so we have over twice their numbers in cavalry, which means in theory we should win this battle, but I'm not taking that risk. We're just a few bad rolls away from having this entire attempt scuppered. So we're erring the side of caution. They've got more troops coming into Orléans. We'll see if we can eliminate that. That might actually trick... Yeah, they're going to move. So that will reset the siege at Paris to the bare minimum, and then we can just scoot back into Alençon and keep marshalling up forces. We'll probably aim for about 30,000 troops here. And if Provence detaches that army, we are going to pursue that. Ouch. 180... ducats and a bunch of diplomatic power. Okay, that's not a good event. So this is a risk here. We're hoping to God we can stack wipe this Provence army before the French reinforce. It doesn't look like we're going to, so we're praying to RNG Jesus here. So we get a 0 to 8 appalling shock roll. Yeah, we have to retreat. So that's what bad rolling will do to you. Who's temper siege? Great. So we got one really atrocious shock roll. I decided it wasn't worthwhile, so we retreated. And we didn't get the stack wipe initially, so... But the French are splitting up their army, as I predicted they would. And so we're turning that victory. We're grasping victory from the jaws of defeat here and using that as an opportunity to actually even the numbers a little bit here. So... Yeah, unfortunately AI still hasn't been... improved sufficiently where they concentrate their forces, which is what... If they just concentrated their forces, it would be impossible to beat France in the 100 Years' War, but they're not there yet, so... And we're still away from actually getting the personal union. And the reason why I'm sort of looking anxiously at the peacetime here is because you could see... that's a lot of black streaks going through England at the moment. That's a lot of pretender rebels. So I'm looking a bit anxiously at the state of England and hoping to God that we can effect some sort of a resolution here. Alright, more bad events. Now, 28,000 troops is enough. I was going to wait for 30,000, but we probably don't have the time. They only have 3 units of cavalry. This should be an easy victory. Let's see here. If we don't at least get average rolls here, I'm going to be bitterly disappointed. Let's see here. Yeah, that looks like a good roll. 8-0. That makes up for the last 2 battles rolling. Excellent. Well, that's effectively it. With that stack wipe, we're just a few minutes away from winning the 100 Years' War. We can affect the personal union now. You can choose to wait and get as much ducats as you want. But for the most part, I'm going to peace out now. And the reason why is The last thing I want is those damn pretender rebels merging up in England. So you can see the casualties here. We lose 60,000 troops. France loses 150,000. That's pretty damn good. I think that's about as good as it gets, winning the 100 Years' War. I'm sure some of you, my viewers here, will be able to do even better, but I will take that any day of the week. Now, I said from the very outset we're going to win the 100 Years' War and win War of the Roses simultaneously, and that's what I intend to do. It's not going to be easy, but for the most part we can employ a few tricks here to beat down the pretender regiments. Well, I'm at 0 manpower, so I don't think losing 6,000 additional manpower is going to do too much damage to me. And, oh yes, must not forget, we'll assign additional rivals. Now, I usually choose Burgundy because they have a habit of declaring war on me soon after winning the 100 Years' War. Bearing in mind that forcing the personal union in France, you generally gain a ton of aggressive expansion, so that's something to keep in mind. Alright, move over my troops to Kent. Don't forget to revoke my inefficient embargoes, and we'll move into London and see if we can wipe out this enemy army. And I am going to send my trade ships, protecting trade, and everything else except the transport ships that I might need later on is going to be mothballed to save as much money as possible. We took a lot of loans doing this, but it's impossible to win the 100 Years' War without taking an excessive amount of loans. It should be easy to pay off anyway, so it's not a big deal. Alright, so we've just got one massive pretender doom stack to defeat. And as I say, since we've got a young faction leader and an heir, we're not really at risk of France severing our personal union anytime in the future. So I'm going to split up my army and see if I can go about... Now, yes, so, okay, this is alright. So I was thinking they were going to move into a province already occupied, so that means they're going to move again, and they're going to pursue us into Hampshire. So I'm going to... We should be able to win this. I'm going to recruit a bunch of mercenaries just as an insurance policy. They're going to take a river crossing, and I'm going to have my reinforcements moving in. We get a bad shock roll, 0 to 5. We win slightly the second shock phase, and I'm just going to marshal everything into Hampshire. These rules suck. But we only have to beat them. Yeah, okay, we've done it. Excellent. Pursue them into London. Come on. We're almost there. Yes, there we go. That is going to be it, folks. We've got our air sorted, so all we have to do is raise our stability up to +1. All the more reason why you saw me recruit that special tier 3 Master of Mint at the start of the game, remember, from the States interaction. That ensures that if you take a bunch of negative stability hits, you can easily recuperate that through raising stability, thanks to the amount of administrative monarch powers we accumulated. So we just need to wipe out this final rebel holdout in the north of the country, in Westmoreland. And I think that is pretty much it. So the conditions to satisfy the end of War of Roses is +1 stability, have an heir, and ensure that the rebels have no more rebel-occupied provinces. That should be pretty easy to accomplish, provided we don't get more rebel events. So I'm going to try and accomplish this as soon as possible. Yeah, and now that we've reached the conclusion of this guy, I'm just trying to think if there's anything I haven't really discussed. I mentioned the fact that if you find yourself at war with Aragon, it's best to restart. Not really much you can do. You can't really defeat France and Aragon simultaneously. I've tried it, but it's too much. You have to get crazy good RNG. Yeah, this is not what I wanted. So we literally get another event. France intervenes directly prior to fulfilling the conditions of ending the War of the Roses. I think we only lost 2 battles throughout this entire war, which is right about where you want to be. And because we're winning the War of Roses, we've set ourselves up into a really, really strong position in the late game. So I'm just going to send some troops over to Normandy in anticipation of this rebel uprising. Boost our stability now. Yeah, we got more than enough. End of War of Roses. Now, these rebels will still spawn, unfortunately, but we got our troops in Normandy. Alright, and that is it, folks. There we have it. Winning the 100 Years' War. You can see we've got them nicely occupied now. And we've won the War of the Roses, so we have a pretty good faction leader and heir set up. And that is going to be it. We defeated France and they had a bunch of allies. Obviously, this can go a lot easier for you depending on the luck. Sometimes you can get some really nice events. But that, for us, that is going to do it. This is the 3rd time I've accomplished this in this patch, so I hope you enjoyed watching. I'm Oscar Mike, and as always, I'll see you next time.